I think we're going to get started. Welcome, everyone. We're glad you're here today with us to join us for our arts panel. I'm Audrey Sirota. I'm the arts coordinator for the Santa Cruz County Office of Education, and I'm going to serve as the moderator for this session. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first panelist. And I want to welcome, before I do that, people who are just coming, and please introduce yourself in the chat. It looks like you're limited to change your name because of the security settings, and that's okay if you'd like to put who you are, where you're from in the chat, and change your pronouns or let us know your pronouns. That would be wonderful. Thank you. And I'd like to now introduce Ezra. And thank you, Ezra. He is a student, well, he just graduated Santa Cruz High School, and he's going to talk to you about the student perspective of for the arts.
All right, thanks, Audrey. My name is Esther Hapner. She just said it. I graduated high school in Santa Cruz. So the main art that I participated in was band. My band director is here actually today, Miss Latham. But I just want to, all right, hold on. So the arts is very important to me, but I don't think it always has been. I didn't get to participate in any art until freshman year when I joined band. Growing up, I loved music like most people do. I was more of a sports kid. You know, I liked academics, but that was just kind of, I was just going along, and then I joined band freshman year, and that just changed everything for me, and I really started to appreciate music in a new way. I had already played, I'm a drummer, I'd already played drums, but it was kind of a side thing that I did, and that started shifting into, you know, my main focus. All my friends became musicians, and it led to me getting into UCLA. That's where I'm going next year for music. So personally, the art program in my school has opened a door that probably wouldn't have been possible if I had not been in it. But shifting away from my story, all my friends, all the people I know in band and in other arts in my school, whether that be ceramics, choir, jewelry, drawing, they all have this relationship with it where that is their thing. And as much as math and science and, you know, technological advancements are super important, that not everyone does that, and not everyone wants to do that. And I think the arts, where those things benefit some people, the arts can benefit everybody. And also focusing in on the current situation we find ourselves in, both with the pandemic and kind of the prevalence of the Black Lives Matter movement. I would say art is just one of the most important things, and you see it in the pandemic. What are people doing at home? They're consuming art, they're consuming movies, you know, music, they're painting, they're drawing, giving kids that base in school. I know my friends that have been in arts programs, they're at home practicing their instrument or practicing their craft. And kids that I know that are good students and they have good family lives, they're at home playing video games. Not saying that's bad, but it's just not having that base. I just think the arts program fills a hole that I think is important for everybody. So thank you.
Thank you, Ezra, so much. And now I'm going to turn it over to Andres Ortiz, who is the new Arts Education Manager for the Arts Council of Santa Cruz County.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Andres Ortiz, and I just wanted to share a little bit with you a story of one of the students that I'm working with in Salinas. I'm a teaching artist as well as the arts education manager, and I'm also a theater artist. My wife and I have another arts organization called Artist Inc. that we work out of Salinas. A lot of those kids we're finding, especially since the pandemic has hit, our high school kids, a lot of them have had to get jobs. So this means that they're sort of on the front lines and they're the ones that are being put at risk. But it's as a result of, their families needing the money and, them being, in economic hardship, positions. So we have one student, her name is Yameli. Unfortunately, she was not able to be here today, but I wanted to share a little bit about her story because she's actually been working in the fields. And, Artist Inc., my wife and I's company, we've been trying to find ways to keep these kids engaged through, the computer because we can't physically meet up. And, it's been met with some challenges, but we have had, many successes. And what we're finding is that these kids are very motivated still to participate in art because it's a way for them to process a lot of the things that they're feeling and to process some of the things that are going on in the way of social justice or injustice, and also, processing their feelings and their fears when it comes to, their potential exposure to, the virus. The student Yameli, she's working in the fields in Salinas, and she's picking strawberries. So a lot of times she'll come into our Zoom sessions, late, and I can tell she still has her mask on. She's still got, she still has her hoodie on, but she shows up every time. She's still so motivated, and she's motivated to be there, and to socialize because that's the thing about art is it's a collaborative effort. So it's a social thing that's very important to kids too. But she's also motivated to write about her feelings. She was telling me that she finds it sort of like as an escape, and the process sort of allows her to sort of calm down, process her feelings in a way that's nonverbal, but that's easier for her to sort of articulate, how she's feeling and work through those feelings. Another thing that we've found, and I'm sure Sarah can speak to this as well, as teaching artists, art is a really great vehicle for students to learn about, to take part in the process of social change, right? It can be a peaceful way for students to protest, right? But it's also a nice hands-on way for them to take part in that social change and be a part of, moving the system in the direction that we know it needs to go. Especially for our students who come from communities of color, communities that are traditionally underserved. Those kids, arts programming, I feel, is especially important for them because it allows them to educate themselves in ways that, are not, that we don't traditionally find in a traditional history class or social studies class. Much like a research paper, in order to create art that speaks true not only to themselves, but to the issues and the history of the subject we're talking about, they have to be well versed in that subject. So that requires them to do research. It requires them to educate themselves in terms of, the roots of the problems that we're having to deal with. So yeah.
Thank you, Andres. And thank you to Ezra and Andres for speaking about the very critical social emotional components that are happening right now. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Brothers, who's the Art Education Director for the Arts Council Santa Cruz. Oh, you're muted, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I would love to echo both Ezra and Andres' sentiments, and there was so much powerful, juicy stuff right there in what you said, Andres. Yeah, I mean, during this time, this crazy, uncertain time, we need the arts more than ever. During this COVID-19 pandemic and the shelter in place, students are experiencing so many increased circumstances, from obstacles to learning, access to learning digitally, homelessness, increased food shortages, and, you know, mental health challenges. You know, not every child has a safe space to be in every day right now. And that's increasing mental health challenges as well. And our students, our communities, our economy needs to heal.
Ooh.
And I truly believe that the arts are the necessary solution to that. You know, we can engage in the arts as a healing practice around trauma, around loneliness, social isolation, healing pain. The arts provide opportunities, as Andres was saying, to have a voice and to be heard. And they can even provide nonverbal communication where speech is limited due to either language or trauma. You know, active engagement in the arts is proven to lower stress, restore brain functions. The arts build agency, resilience, and develop increase positive emotion. They're fun, it's engaging, it's exciting, it feels good. And the arts build social connection. They allow people to be seen and connected through shared experiences. And the arts engage students in a variety of processes, which I think Indy's probably going to get into more in depth, but processes like envisioning and creating and reflecting, revising, presenting. And these art practices are what allow students to learn to self-regulate and to develop an awareness of others' emotions, building interpersonal skills, and build confidence in expressing themselves. And it strengthens their self-identity. I know we're going to be sharing some reports. There's been numerous reports that show how arts education, it doesn't only decrease feelings of anxiety and depression and stress, but it also supports the development of, you know, very essential cognitive, social, emotional skills that promote the health and well-being of children and contribute to their success in school and work and life. There's numerous studies, but one more recent one that directly links or explores the correlation between the practice of art and social emotional development was done recently in Chicago K-12 public schools, and we'll be sharing a link to that report. It was a pretty extensive lit review and then field work in the public schools. So,
thank you, Sarah. And Sarah did allude to Indy is going to speak with us next, and their newest role is as Executive Director of the Arts Education Alliance of the Bay Area. And Indy also serves as a faculty member of Alameda County Office of Education's Integrated Learning Specialist Program, and also teaches with Harvard's Project Zero classroom. So Indy, without further ado.
Hey, thanks, Audrey. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Ezra, also, and Andres. I got a really great intro from Audrey. So here's just, I wanted to pull together a slide. I'm very much into making learning and thinking visible. And so this is just a little bit about the work that I do. You can see, so I work a lot with teachers, both locally, nationally, and internationally. Through the Alameda County Office of Education and Harvard's Project Zero. And I really, a lot of the work that I do is around bringing equity and creativity to the core of teaching and leadership. I was asked to talk about arts integration, and I want to be honest, like I've been thinking a lot lately, both everyone's alluded to, like the current sort of cultural reflection that's happening across the United States. And I really think a lot when we talk about arts integration that I'm really interested in the conversations I'm having around kind of thinking about art integration, primarily art as the idea of the expression and documentation of culture and ideas. So if we know that that is what art is, and we think about right now the current expressions of culture and ideas that are happening all across the country, the murals in downtown Oakland, the many murals across the country in response to George Floyd's murder and everything that's happening with police brutality. I feel like this is a time to really name that the arts are about culture, and therefore arts integration is about culturally responsive teaching. How are educators and administrators being responsive to the cultures and experiences of our students? And how is that reflected in their learning? How are we making sure to bring that into the classroom, into our schools, and not only our content, but how we teach. And this is from Zaretta Hammond. I think a lot of folks are familiar with her work. But she talks about culturally responsive teaching as not just being about the content and making sure to have a diversity of voices in your curricula. It's not just about having a purpose of social justice and social equity, but it's also about building the capacity of individual students to be able to be creative thinkers and change makers. And we saw that a lot. I think, Ezra, you just kind of really spoke to that from your own experience, and Andres, for the student that you were speaking to, that there's really about addressing the social, emotional, or affective aspects of learning, as well as the cognitive aspects. This is a quote from a rising ninth grader, and just really speaking to that disconnect happening that I think happens a lot for students in our classroom. And I think when we talk about arts integration, it really is about what is the culture of collaboration that we're creating in our classroom spaces. And like, this really affected me when I heard about this quote, and this idea that most teachers don't really care about each individual student's feelings or their learning pace and style. I often find that our students are our best teachers to tell us what they need. And it's about how do we become responsive to their needs, to what they're noticing a lot out in the world. And it's really important to name that even when we talk about arts integration, a lot of times I also want to make sure we're really rooted in whose art and culture we're talking about and who we're being responsive to. So if all teaching, no matter who is teaching or what's happening, is culturally responsive, it's actually really important to think about whose culture is it responsive to. And we know right now that the majority of our teachers in the country, our public school teachers, are white. At the same time that our student population is becoming more and more racially diverse. So it really brings this question to the forefront. When we talk about arts integration and culturally responsive teaching, what we're really talking about is, again, whose culture are we supporting and how are we responding to the experiences that students are bringing into the classroom or into our learning spaces. So also thinking about the role of teachers are put often into this role of policing our students. And I think that really resonates with the current, that was my 4 minutes, so I'll take one more minute. And I so appreciate you all going through this with me. How are we nurturing curiosity, choice, and creativity over compliance? Over, like, are they wearing the right uniform? Are they, being quiet in class? Like, how do we really see, really encourage student engagement over student management? And I'm gonna quickly segue just to name that this approach to arts integration, culturally responsive teaching, continues a legacy and lineage of transformative education from W.E.B. Du Bois and John Dewey, all the way up to Zaretta Hammond. And if you haven't read Dr. Patina Love's latest book on abolitionist teaching, I would highly recommend it. And I'm just gonna wrap it up. I apologize. Again, this is very new for me. I just felt very excited, very moved by the current social conditions that we're existing in by the students locally where I live in Alameda, who are protesting about having de-policing their schools. So I just wanna end by saying, check out Project Zero, Studio Habits of Mind. And really a lot of people talk about the studio thinking framework. And to me, it's a move. You can see the little circles. It's a move from the teacher-centered, like teacher lecture with a tiny bit of student doing and a tiny bit of critique and reflection, to really shifting the time we spend to really focus on student making. What are they creating? What are project-based learning? And then incorporating critique or reflection on that, as well as exhibition. Like, how is what they're making or doing meaningful to a broader audience outside of that one teacher? And how do we really expand that? And just to name that, the 8 Studio Habits of Mind really reinforce a lot of our integrated learning frameworks, which is the overlap between our math, science, and ELA standards, primarily through that role of critique and reflection, as well as envisioning project-based learning. And I'm gonna stop there, and I apologize because, again, this is, I created this morning. I just felt really moved, and I appreciate you all listening.
Thank you so much, Indy. fact, there's such a wealth of information, insights, experience, and expertise here. So thank you all. And we're going to turn it over to Sophia Fojas, who is the new arts coordinator, arts and culture coordinator for the Santa Clara County Office of Education. She will be speaking about advocacy, and Sarah will be jumping in occasionally. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you, Indy. Actually, I've stepped away from a teacher training around studio habits of mind and culturally responsive teaching and learning in an effort to bring arts organizations and schools that are Title I schools together into a cohort to examine new strategies of teaching and learning through the studio habits of mind. And so I'm just stepping away from that this morning, but happy to come and speak to you. I also feel very much my discipline is music, and I really honed my craft, not just as a strings teacher, but then began teaching mariachi in the public schools. And so I come with that perspective. I come with the arts and culture perspective when I approach education. And so my experience is rooted in culturally specific supports around the arts. So mariachi for Latinx students, working with bringing in San Jose Taiko to be a partner, and but also having done some arts and culture work in San Francisco. And so interested in just leveraging kind of what's happening right now around George Floyd and sort of the awareness around race and how it has been influencing major institutions and our mindsets. So I want to show you, I was going to give you data around, 40% of children, grades 6 through 12 are participating in the arts, according to the California Arts Ed Data Project that Create California puts out. And we know that the arts are mandated in the state ed code. And so what are we as a system how are we supporting arts instruction in K-12 education? And so a lot of the things that I have a few minutes, but teacher preparation, what can we do around teacher preparation and making sure novice teachers are having grounded in arts training in their prep courses. And then we also know that students of color are in what are de facto segregated schools, and which are often under-resourced and over-policed. And so I wanted to show you a website that has really, because it's an election year, really important resource to point to, and it's called racecounts.org. So I point this out to you because it makes some important statements about the different regions in our state. And so for those of you outside of California or outside of the Bay Area, you can actually delve into this resource and take a look at how race really plays a defining factor in how people succeed in our state. And so they do have the issues that are highlighted here are really important. And if I go to education, they have a big piece on education. You can actually, and I will let you at your own, at your own discretion go through this, because this is really a rich, and it has actually been more beefed up as we head into the election in November. But if you take a look, you can see you can divide it up by county. We have state rankings, and with the overview in California, here's the population, a racial breakdown of the population in California. And they have some key takeaways around economic opportunity, healthcare access. But the thing I want to point out right now is education. So we see in high school graduation, here are the statistics. 3rd grade English proficiency, They show the best rate and then the rates across the major ethnic demographics. Suspensions from lowest to highest. And so it's important when we look at data like this, early childhood education, whereas the arts are mandated, and we know that the arts through ESSA, here's teacher staff diversity, we know that the arts are essential, and I've actually been called out in ESSA, why do we not have proportionate access or participation of students of color? And then chronic absenteeism. So these things weigh heavily on my mind as an educational leader in addressing, in particular, arts education, because we know that the arts is a tool for family engagement, for student engagement, but more importantly, and it's been alluded to, but the arts are a way to assess students' understanding, and it can be in any content area. Sarah, do you want to add something around SEL or arts as an expanded tool for understanding?
No, I have a bunch of, not really. I mean, I have a bunch of other resources around advocacy and advocacy tools that I can definitely share and jump in on when you're ready.
Okay.
But I didn't, no, nothing else to share on that at the moment.
So I just wanted to point this out to you as a resource, and at your leisure, can certainly take a look at this. It's really important information. And I think it really has a bearing on the way arts education can be implemented in our state.
Thank you, Sophia.
Definitely.
Thanks.
I'm going to, if this is okay, because of our time, I'm going to turn it over to Christy Latham. And Christy is a phenomenal music teacher. And I say that from personal and professional experience. And she just got done serving as the president of the Central Coast California Music Educators Association. And Christy, can you tell us about advocacy at your school and district level, at the site level?
So many thoughts come to mind after all of the wonderful presenters. It's such a complex and multifaceted approach, I should say, and to be as positive as you can when you're at your site. But one of the things that Ezra mentioned that I think is really key was that he didn't have access to the music classes in middle school, and that the schedules, the actual bell schedules that we have at our different school sites can help students have the access or not have the access. And that foundation of our schedules is one of the big keys. For example, in our area, if you're in an English language development class, an EL student, or if you're an RSP student needing resources, you're scheduled into those tutorials and you're not allowed to have an elective. So therefore, we're limiting the access at the middle level because there's only 6 periods a day. So if I were to advocate for anything, it's that every school needs to have 7 periods so you can have music or art and the things that you need, not or. At our high school, we have basically 8 periods because we're on a 4x4 block, and for us, band ends up being 7 and 8. And we're also really lucky that the person in charge of the master schedule makes sure there's no singletons next to the band class. Because if you put band and AP English next to each other, they might quit band for a semester and they might not come back. And they'll choose AP English or Math Academy or, all the classes that they need. We've also been really creative to be able at Santa Cruz High to have it so the kids can take AVID and all the other things as well, because AVID proves to be really beneficial for many students in their advancement to college. So I'd say one of the biggest keys is getting a schedule that's going to be friendly to students taking both their art, band, theater, dance, drama, music, and that's one of the biggest things. Another thing I highly recommend is becoming a part of NAFME, which is the National Association for Music Education. NAFME is basically for music, but it also collaborates with all the other arts organizations, and they do a National Advocacy Day, which they didn't get to do this year. And then when you're a NAFME member, you're also a state member of CMEA, and they do a state advocacy day as well. then you're also a member of the local section, and I was just the local section president. But NAFME also has tons and tons and tons of advocacy resources on their website. And they also have curriculum, and they have just tons of stuff. I can't even think of it all right this second. But they also provide at the state level music supervisors supports to teach you how to supervise music teachers and what to look for, and how to evaluate us differently, because we're not the same as everybody else on the campus. And what was the other thing? Oh, the last thing I wanted to leave with is that one of the things I work really, really hard at is creating a culture in my classroom where everybody's valuable. We have students like Ezra, who's going to UCLA to major in music, but I also have students who, even as a senior, their musicianship may not have been very high, but they still had a place. And Ezra and the other folks in the classroom all had something to offer, and they were all valuable people. And either through their personality or their actions or their intent or their joy or their love, they all had a place in the classroom. And you mentioned also culturally responsive teaching. That also leads itself towards the music we pick to play in the classroom. And I am really glad to see over the last several years, there's a big push in the band world to have composers that aren't just white men. They're still going to exist, and we're going to still play their music because some of it's really, really good. But the breadth and availability of diverse resources in our classroom is richer than I've ever seen it in the last 25 years I've been teaching. And it's been a real joy and pleasure to take some of these resources to the students and say, okay, why do you think we're playing this piece of music? Or let's look at this composer, and talk about how we can do things differently and think differently.
Christy, thank you so much for giving us those resources and some very, very practical tips about how to support students and gaining access to the arts. So our last presenter will be Jeanine Flores, and Jeanine is the new arts coordinator. I think your title is different now, Jeanine, at the Los Angeles County Office of Education. And Jeanine's going to talk to us, she's going to give us a little summary, and she's going to talk about the implications for career and college. Thank you, Jeanine.
Hi, everybody. It's great to have you all here. And, you know, we heard a lot this morning already about how the arts allow students to feel, to be seen, and to be heard. And that's a huge, huge deal, right? I know as administrators, we might be worried about the bell schedule and how we're going to reopen in the fall, but we also need to be cognizant of the social emotional learning and our well-being, mental well-being of our students as we reopen. I also heard that the arts are essential and that we should be having choice and creativity in our courses, and that we need to have a support group. So joining organizations where we can get information and support. So like, I don't know how to reopen my school in the fall. And what does NAFME say about instruments or singing, right? Or theater class, visual arts class, you know, these are huge things that are on everybody's mind. So if you're a teacher leader, presenting that to your administration and the district office would be good. And a couple other things I just wanted to share out is that, you know, the arts in California is a part of the Ed Code, and it's part of ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act. And I also want to point to some resources for parents. The California PTA has a wonderful parent guide to the visual and performing arts, and it's being rewritten to align with our new standards. And I just want to encourage everybody to keep talking. We have people here from all size districts. We have very small districts to very large districts. I'm in the largest county in LA, and we all need support at our level. So please reach out. I'm at the county office in Los Angeles, but Audrey's the one in Santa Cruz. Sophia's here, she's in Santa Clara, and they're a good starting place if you don't know where to go. And then as we move in the fall, I think we just need to keep talking about well, how is it going to look for my classroom, or how's it going to look for our students in the arts, the blended learning, and be a solution partner, maybe doing research on how does this look like online or in person in the fall, instead of just saying, well, what about me? Making sure we can come up with some, how about we do it this way? And how do we reopen with the arts? You guys are the experts if you're an arts teacher, so please keep talking. And to speak to creative economy, the arts has a huge portion of the creative economy in California here. And when we look at the World Economic Forum's report on what skills are needed for future employees, creativity is in the top 5, problem solving is in the top 5, and dealing with other people, right? Communicating and interpersonal skills. These are all things that the arts bring forward, whether it's through arts integration or through arts specific. These are things that we teach. So career technical education, as well as the arts, can all support getting our kids into college or into their career pathways. And I don't want to be short-sighted on the careers paths. That's our ultimate goal, in my opinion, is to get us citizens that are going to be actively engaged in our economy and our community. So let's equip them well, and let's make sure that everybody has access to it by being creative. The system is set up to not serve all students right now. So let's please be mindful. We have an opportunity to restructure things as we move forward. And Create California has some resources online as well. It's createcalifornia.org, createca.org actually. And they have some wonderful online resources, including a student careers. A lot of families and students and teachers and counselors don't know that there are careers available in the arts that are very profitable. And you aren't going to be a starving artist if you follow into the arts. So educating people on there is value and career opportunities here. So that is all I'm going to say. I'm going to pass it over to our moderator, Audrey, to see if we need to do any Q&A or see if there's
Yes. I noticed, and I put, Jeanine, I put the resource for Create California and the California PTA and some other resources in the chat. And I also, for our people who are hanging with us this morning, I put our presenters' bios as well as a pretty expansive resource list. And Christy, you were going to
wanted to try to address Darlene Hale's question.
Thank you.
And I have been collaborating with our general music teacher and the choir teacher that I partner teach with, documents on how to address our performing arts classes with the new restrictions. One of the key things I think we all need to do is to measure the band rooms or choir rooms, because they are larger classrooms than a regular classroom and you can fit more students in them. To help, our secondary curriculum person was talking with me. We are going to likely, we don't know anything that's going to happen tomorrow, let alone in August, but we are likely to go to a hybrid where we have a cohort A and cohort B meeting 2 days a week, and then the other 2 days a week, and 1 day is distance. They're working with us to have groupings that make sense for our classes. Like all the jazz band kids would be in cohort 1, or all the brass kids in cohort 2, or that kind of thing. So we can have groupings that make sense to help them progress musically and to still have smaller classes with the cohorts as well. Something else that I was really excited to see, and I can try to get the link in the to Audrey, is there's a video that I gave to my district that showed when you're playing an instrument, it actually acts as a diffuser. They put a piece of tissue or piece of cloth in front of them by about 3 feet, and then they played the trumpet and the cloth didn't move. And then they played about 4 or 5 different instruments. So when they blew, they could blow the cloth, but with the instrument stopped it, and it moves the sound waves, it doesn't move the air. And there's a graphic in the video as well that demonstrates that. Choir's a little bit more challenging, obviously, but the wind instruments, there's hope for it, and even percussion, you know, that's easy. They can wear masks, and you can wear a mask and play a string instrument as well. But I had hope when I saw this video, and our area seems to be supportive, but there are counties in our state right now that are saying no music and art at all, unfortunately. I don't even know how to begin with that, because what I felt suffered the most from my students being at home was their social emotional well-being. It wasn't their skill, it wasn't their technique. They couldn't even do math because they were so isolated, and we're social creatures. And my band kids are really close to each other. I have 100 kids in the band. They are really good friends. Like Ezra said, all his friends are doing music. Their social and emotional well-being was what suffered the most by far. So I'm working really hard with our district to try to get as many class hours as I can with kids, because that's what they need. They need to be around people. They need to be around each other. And I even think personally, this is my personal standpoint, is that if we think that kids are going to sit at home for 3 days a week at a high school level when they're not in school and not be around each other, I think they're safer at school. Even if we went back to school 5 days a week, I think that they're safer back in school than they would be at home 3 days a week, because they're not going to sit home when their parents go to work. And that's part of the reason why I do what I do. I have the band room open until 4 or 5 or 6 every day, and we go do things all the time. But so they have a place to be and they have something to connect to, because all the studies shows if they have an adult to connect to at school, then they're more likely to be successful in everything they do. And somebody asked about playing outside. Yes, they can play outside for sure, but you still have to social distance outside. And the National Association for High School Activities was saying you can have up to 50 people outside now. It used to be 10, but they've now increased it to 50. So I'm going to try to do band camp just to get the kids on campus together and have them be together. They're jonesing for that. And every time I run into one in the grocery store, it's like hard for them not to run up and hug me. But, you know, it's like, it's hard for me too. And seeing the kids at graduation, we didn't have official graduation. It was hard not to be able to, you know, do those normal things. So that will be the challenge, is not connecting physically when we see each other. No. Anyway, so there's my little diatribe. Sorry.
No. Thank you. And let's see. So we addressed the outside question. We are open for other questions. And Christy, if you can find that video and put it in the chat now so people can access it, because I know, was it Darlene? Somebody was, oh no, Sharon. You were told, do you want to speak for a second? Sharon Carter.
Hi there. We are taking our advice from the county public health officer, and their guidance has told us no brass, no woodwinds, and choir we're begging to do with face shields if we can. So our elementary kids, I think they're a little more concerned about them handling things. I'm not sure what it'll look like at high school. We can go outside. The hard part for us is we have, like today is a red air day. We have a lot of those in the valley anytime there's fires. So I'm not super confident we'll have a lot of great outdoor days. It's either, 102 degrees or fires in the summer and fall. So just looking for other ideas so I can make it work for our kiddos and not take a year off. We really work hard to prepare kids for junior high and high school music. We want them to continue. So my teachers are really concerned. We lost a lot of kids during the distance learning too. Even though we sent instruments home with them, we Zoomed, but I know we experienced that across the board.
So I posted the video into the chat section, and Audrey can put it into the resources as a document as well. One of the key things is having access so kids don't share instruments. Right. I've been in a fortunate place where none of my students share instruments, and that's one of the key things. And something I have to add for next year is that they won't share drumsticks, right. And getting little stick bags for every kid so they don't, share things that way. Yeah, So I think it costs money, but I also think that there's community members. We get instruments donated from community members frequently.
Right. I actually have a great budget, and we have instruments for every kid that wants one.
Yeah, if they're not sharing it, then I don't see a problem. NAFME has some resources, and there's some other ones I'd have to dig to find. But this video is a really great visual. If anybody's concerned about wind instruments, watch the video.
I think that would be great to show school boards and county health people, for sure. Because especially if they're making the call in your area about that. And I know we have in Santa Cruz County, we started weekly music teacher meetings. And so teachers were sharing a lot of resources that weren't ideal, but they were working, like Soundtrap. And that's just one example of many. And I can get you more resources that were highlighted in those meetings if you just email me directly. And our emails are all in the bio pages. And just music teachers, other things that you tried using digitally, or Ezra, if you tried using anything digitally.
Well, one thing we were doing in band is not that it's like you know, replacement for band, but it was a really cool thing to do during the quarantine. And that was we'd take pieces that we already knew, and then we'd each record our part and layer them up, and we have a few videos we put on YouTube and whatnot. So that was a really cool thing, and that was one of the only exciting things I would say during quarantine that I did regarding school. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
So we also used Smart Music because they had the free subscriptions, and I love Smart Music and I think it's a fantastic tool. My students detest it. And part of what it does is it's black and white. And so much of art, whatever art you're doing, is you know, the space in between, or the or just the experience of it, and playing your notes into a computer and having the computer telling you what is right and wrong is really frustrating for students. And Flipgrid, I tried Flipgrid. My students weren't thrilled about it, but I know other teachers who loved Flipgrid and thought that it was great. And I've been told that because Flipgrid is a little bit like social media, you have to have clearance if you're using it for under a certain age, because the students can see each other's videos. So if you, and I don't remember what the cutoff age is. I think it's 8th grade or 14 or 15 is what you have to do. So Flipgrid is fun and it's friendly for sure, but they can see each other.
And there were controls that teachers were learning about where they could take away that capacity, just so you know. And for anyone that wants more resources, yeah, several of the teachers in Pajaro Valley Unified School District were using Smart Music. It sounds like with a little more success, but Soundtrap definitely was the winner. And somebody was asking for more things that we were doing, and what we've been exploring at the end of the year was virtual classrooms. And I highly recommend that you YouTube it and look at it. It's a great way to organize your content and give students a lot of voice and choice in what they're doing through the digital learning context. We actually, I just looked at the clock and we have to go. We have a break for the next 10 minutes, and then you have a second session to go to. We are going to do a second session if anybody wants to stay in, and we definitely get it if you want to go to your next session. So we'll take a break. If you want to email me for any more resources or any of the presenters, we have their emails in the bios that I posted. And we want to thank you all presenters. Thank you for taking your time to share your information. Participants, thank you so much for joining us. And I would be happy to incorporate anyone who would like to join our weekly music meetings, which will start up soon. And they're on Tuesdays at 10 o'clock right now. So thank you, all of you, for being here. And special thanks to Ezra, Andres, Sarah, Indy, Sophia, Christy, and Jeanine.